Welcome to KBS World Radio. You're now tuned in to Korea 24's Korea Book Club, where we explore the world of Korean literature. This is our weekend replay edition, playing back our book segment from Wednesday's show. We hope you enjoy it. I'm your host, Kwon Jang-woo. Joining us now, it is our literary critic, Barry Welsh. Barry, hello. It's great to see you.
Yes, hello.
Okay, so what do you have for our listeners this week?
So this week we're reviewing a novel called Endless Blue Sky by Lee Hyoseok, published in 2018 by Honford Star and translated into English by Stephen D. Capener. The Korean title is 벽공무한, and regular listeners will know that Honford Star have published several excellent English translations, including Cursed Bunny by Bora Chong and Tower by Bae Myung-hoon. And translator Stephen D. Capener is a professor at Seoul Women's University who, as well as translating E's fiction, has written extensively about his influences. And E was born in Pyeongchang in 1907 and debuted as a writer at the tender age of 21. He's most famous for his celebrated short stories Leaves of Grass and The Buckwheat Season, as well as the novel that we're reviewing today. E tried tragically young from meningitis in 1942. He was only 36 years old. He's celebrated for the early socialist leanings of his first short stories, his embrace of modernism and frank depictions of sexuality, his cosmopolitanism and his lyricism. And Capener argues that Endless Blue Sky is the culmination of E's interests and influences. Endless Blue Sky was first serialized in the Mail daily newspaper from January 1940 to July 1941, which is also the period the novel is set. It's a deeply enjoyable, sweepingly romantic story of a Korean man seeking to escape the fascism of Japanese colonized Korea and the restrictive Confucianism of Korean traditional culture by travelling to Manchuria, where he falls in love with a beautiful Russian musician. It's a novel in love with modernity and features train journeys, cabarets, business ventures going bust, love triangles, unrequited love, suicide, trips to the racetrack and the orchestra, and many more signifiers of modernism. It's a soapy, melodramatic joy, and readers will find much to love in its pages.
Wow, I mean, already it sounds like a fascinating book ahead of its time. Can you provide a brief summary of the plot first and the central themes explored, and tell us how it perhaps reflects the period it was written in as well?
So, Endless Blue Sky narrates the journey of Cheon Il-ma, a Korean man in his 30s, currently living in Seoul when the novel begins, and essentially a stand-in for writer E himself. And Il-ma is in search of purpose and meaning in his life. He's feeling the weight of his age and the challenges that he's faced throughout his life, and he's contemplating the need to transform his life for the better. He's reflecting on his life and his existence, he thinks, has been marked by hardships, including the heartbreak of a failed romance and the recent tragedy of losing his last living family member, his mother, which has left him emotionally devastated. As the novel begins, an opportunity arises for him to embark on a cultural mission to Harbin, which is situated in Japanese-controlled Manchuria, but is now part of China. And though he has visited the city previously, he believes this trip might hold the key to a decisive turning point in his life. Il-ma falls in love with the cosmopolitan modernity of the city, which in Il-ma's eyes presents a refreshing contrast to the conservative ambience of Korea. And he thinks to himself, for some reason, whenever I come here, I feel like I've arrived at the place I've been searching for. And most of the novel's drama is centred around Il-ma's romantic entanglements as he falls in love with this beautiful but impoverished Russian musician and his friends, as well as they fall in and out of love against the backdrop of this thriving cosmopolitan city.
Right, okay. So the period this novel was written in and set in, it was a very turbulent time for the Korean Peninsula. The country was still under Japanese colonization, and it was in September of 1940 Japan would officially join World War II as well. So does the novel reflect this turbulent period that it was written in as well?
So interestingly, not as such. So it doesn't focus on these traditional or typical depictions of Korean life under Japanese colonization. Many of the books we've reviewed in the past, which are set in this period, are about how difficult life was for the average Korean under Japanese colonization, for Korean people in general. However, what Lee is doing here, what he's focusing on instead, is the possibility for individual freedom and choices of lifestyle in the increasingly modernized Western European-influenced Harbin region of Manchuria. This is a book positively alive with the possibilities of modernity and personal freedom, and he also gives his female characters a much higher degree of autonomy and agency and even sexual freedom than many of his contemporaries or many other novels set in this period, leading to what must surely have been some quite shocking or scandalous elements in the novel. So, for example, at one point an actress drugs one of the male characters in order to facilitate a liaison, and one of the things this novel encapsulates is the thrilling sense that social mores are changing, new ways of living are possible, there are new morals even, new ideas, new technology and new forms of entertainment. And at times the characters just seem drunk on the possibilities that these things seem to offer. So for example, at one point Il-ma thinks of a department store. The goods on display on all floors gave off a subtle glimmer and pleasing vibe of Europe. This was not the result of anything that could happen in a day. This glow that suffused the place was the product of strong traditions accumulated and passed down over 1,000 years. It was like a small display case of Europe itself. And Il-ma and the other characters just can't get enough of all these shiny new things.
That's really interesting, somewhat, perhaps I should say refreshing in some ways
Right.
as well, to see a different aspect of Korean society at the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is E's writing purely celebratory throughout this novel, or does he recognise some of the problems that come with this modernity?
Right, yeah. So this is another compelling aspect of the book. So he does recognise the darker elements of Western influence and modernity in general. So at the same time as some of the characters are enjoying the wild party lifestyle afforded them by the modern city, the longer the characters spend in Harbin, the more they become aware of and exposed to the city's seedier element. So crime is rife in the city, there's criminal gangs operating, and there's a subplot involving the kidnapping of a wealthy businessman, and then there's another subplot about a young woman who's addicted to drugs. And then finally, in the later sections of the book, Lee's focus shifts a little to see what is it like when Il-ma tries to take some of this Western modernity back to Seoul. He returns there with his new Russian wife, and we see how her European sensibilities fit or perhaps clash with life in Seoul and the traditional Korean culture and lifestyles there.
Okay, so E's novel is over 80 years old at this point, although the fact that Stephen Capener's translation was published by Honford Star in 2018 itself is a bit of a stamp of approval. But still, does it hold much interest for modern readers, or is this something more suitable perhaps for academics to study?
So Endless Blue Sky is absolutely a novel that deserves a wider, more mainstream readership. So if you've read or watched things like Pachinko by Min-jin Lee or the drama Mr. Sunshine, then this is something that you very well might enjoy. It's a very pleasurable read. It's just begging for a lavish film or TV adaptation with handsome actors and beautiful actresses and gorgeous costumes and lovingly recreated period details. And he conjures up all of these elements very clearly, very vividly, and it's a delightful, soapy, melodramatic novel.
What's different from Pachinko and Mr. Sunshine is, of course, the fact that this was written at the time that the story is set in. So that's fascinating to hear, and it sounds like this will be a book that I think many of our listeners would want to seek out. It's called Endless Blue Sky by Lee Hyoseok. We're going to have to wrap it up there, Barry. It's been a pleasure as always, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Okay, take care.
And that's all for this week's Korea Book Club. You can check out more of the works we discussed on our website at world.kbs.co.kr. Join us again next week.